The Trump administration's request to reinstate its travel ban on citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries has been denied by the U.S. Appeals Court amid an intensifying legal battle. Plus, fire, smoke, bombs, and broken windows this week. A planned speech by a Trump supporter at California's Berkeley University was canceled after riots against his appearance broke out on campus and pro-Trump activists were attacked.
5 minutes later, my friends and I were cornered by about 150 people, all dressed in black, taking people's hats, pushing people against railings, throwing us over borders. This is what radical leftism looks like.
And in the wake of the Louisville attack in France, even centrist hopefuls in the upcoming presidential election are starting to sound like their right-wing rivals. This is RT International coming to you live from Moscow. I'm Marina Joshi. Now, in the latest development surrounding Donald Trump's travel ban on citizens of 7 Muslim-majority countries, his administration's request to reinstate the ban has been denied by the U.S. Appeals Court. The travel restrictions were blocked after a federal judge in Seattle issued a nationwide ruling against the president's executive order on Friday.
I find that a temporary restraining order is in the public interest. I find that the court should and will grant the temporary restraining order.
Judge Robart's decision, effective immediately, effective now, puts a halt to President Trump's unconstitutional and unlawful executive order, or nation of laws. Folks not everybody may like this decision. I'm certain the president will not like this decision, but it is his job, it is his responsibility, it is his obligation as our president to honor it, and I'll make sure he does.
Reacting to the judge's move, President Trump called it ridiculous, questioning whether it's appropriate that a judge can hold a Homeland Security travel ban. Meanwhile, the past week saw people across the U.S. take to the streets to protest the ban. And the wave of resistance to Trump's policies has given some the impression the country is at war with its new president. One American congresswoman dubbed Wednesday's violent protest at the University of California in Berkeley a beautiful sight. They broke out shortly before a senior editor of the news website Breitbart was due to give a speech against so-called sanctuary campuses, which offer protection to undocumented students.
We have seen demonstrations, and I think we've already talked about that around the country. Young people at Berkeley protesting against this unconstitutional order. And so as we encourage our young people to get involved, I thought it was a beautiful sight.
The riot over a planned event at the campus has raised concerns in the media over free speech. Some suggest the protests were somewhat ironic, given that the university considers itself a beacon of the free speech movement.
Berkeley University in California, a place to be and be seen.
Life-shaping, world-changing, future-building.
Berkeley.
Berkeley. Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Its official motto is, "Let there be light." And there was. Isn't the pen mightier than the sword? Seems no one told these students. Extracurricular activities. But there's no expanding of minds here. And all because the guest speaker is a Trump supporter. University's all about discovering your identity, not concealing it.
Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down!
Attempting to be picture perfect can make you a fashion victim, quite literally.
Are you surprised, ma'am?
This is what radical leftism looks like. I absolutely did not know that was going to happen. I should have known better. Like, I came prepared with a hat. Rioters came prepared with mace, batons, you know, assault weapons. Like, I should have actually known.
You know, a cappuccino won't exactly get your point across. Even your soy milk latte just doesn't taste right. Oh, shut up. It's all fine. Just as long as you recycle the debris.
Meanwhile, an opinion poll released by Reuters this week found more people agree with Trump's travel restrictions than disagree. And another recent poll showed 2/3 of likely American voters approve of the temporary ban on refugees from certain countries. Let's now take a wider look at how people are feeling towards the new president. Here's a resistance. The hot spots are mostly found along the coast, with strongholds in New York and Washington, D.C. In the Northwest is Seattle. That's where the block on travel restrictions came from. RT's Caleb Maupin went further inland to find out why not all people there share the anti-Trump sentiment.
After Trump won, chaos took hold in America's big cities. Windows got smashed and buildings were vandalized. But further away from Washington, D.C., like here in Wilmington, the buildings had already been crumbling for a long time.
It's not good. We don't have jobs. We need jobs.
Poverty's horrible. You know, business is lost. You know, like look at Airborne. And
when Airborne closed, you know, thousands of people lost their jobs. So it affected a lot of businesses. I just think that we haven't had a voice for, you know, a long time. So I'm excited about the president.
I feel like we have been forgotten. After DHL pulled out of Wilmington, our little town crashed. And, you know, I feel like Trump is going to maybe better that. He came here twice.
The signs in the community and in the farmers' land and stuff, it was all Trump. Yeah, people would like to see a change.
When it comes to protesters, locals say they don't mind people speaking up, but they don't understand what all the fuss is about.
It's crazy. I mean, I think that, you know, people don't get their way, and so they gotta act like children. And
I'm a little disgusted with these people. I don't get that. It's not going to change anything.
That is ridiculous to me. I mean, if they want to be heard, I think there's other ways that you can do that and not be violent.
They certainly don't see Trump the way mainstream media has portrayed him, as a racist xenophobe.
They're perpetuating the hate.
It's the media. I think that there's a lot that is coming from the opposite party. There's a lot bigger things that are going on in our country that we need to deal with and stop this.
I didn't like either one of them. I didn't want either one of them. I weighed, you know, the two evils. I feel like Trump's going to do better for us.
I'm hoping he can do some of the things he said.
Times are hard here in Ohio, with many jobs in manufacturing eliminated. The local community has worked very hard to draw attention to its plight. Obama visited Clinton County back in 2008 and even made a radio campaign bemoaning local hardships. But locals say that after he became president, the hope and change never really arrived. Michael O'Mackerly worked at a local shipping center for 11 years before being laid off along with thousands of others. He and his family get by his earnings as a craftsman, making bespoke knives. He says thousands of other families here haven't been so lucky, and that the Obama years weren't so great for Wilmington.
When Barack Obama came through the town, he promised that he would, you know, that we'd be #1 on his agenda. Well, the votes didn't show that we voted for him. He never contacted us again, and we were ready for something different. We were ready to bring some jobs back here. We're really concerned about the economy. Just on my small street here, we probably had 7 houses for sale.
Only Trump visited the area twice during his campaign, promising to bring better days. Just a week into the Trump presidency, it's too early to judge his performance. But here, locals at least want to give him the chance to deliver.
He started doing the job before he took the job. That's pretty much dedication, don't you think?
Caleb Maupin, RT, Wilmington, Ohio.
Now, adding fuel to the anti-Trump flames are media outlets. Ever since what many saw as his surprise election victory, the president's image has dominated front pages, and not exactly in a positive light. Germany's Der Spiegel, for example, picked this picture for its February cover, and it depicts Trump beheading the Statue of Liberty, ISIL style. The Irish publication Village sparked outrage after it pondered whether the U.S. president should be assassinated. Its cover showing him in the crosshairs of a gun. Meantime, an Iraqi family tried to take advantage of the travel ban by blaming Trump for a personal tragedy.
I really, really believe this in my heart. If they would have let us in, my mom, she would have made it, and she would have been sitting right here next to me. She's gone because of him.
And the claim was aired on Fox News and sparked widespread headlines. However, it was later revealed the man had in fact lied, and his mother had died even before the Trump travel restrictions came into effect. In fact, the confirmation came from an imam close to the family. He spoke with RT.
I know the family very well, and I know their mother has died around 22nd because the community held here a funeral home for 24 and 23rd. The banning law of Mr. Trump came, I believe, after the death of the lady. Well, unfortunately, some of the media are extreme and they're looking for a catch so they can blame President Trump. I think this banning law, the immigration law of Mr. Trump, has two sides. It's meant to prevent terrorists from coming to this country. That's good. And I still remember his statement before the election, and this is why I voted for him. And the bad side of the law, we have trouble in Iraq. Terrorists coming from north of Iraq, from Turkey, and south of Iraq, from Saudi Arabia. So he discluded, unfortunately, Mr. Trump, discluded Turkey and Saudi Arabia.
It's not the first time Trump's been blamed for people's sufferings. But as Anissa Nawi explains, people have very short memories.
I'm going to say something about Trump. And most of you will put me in a box of pro or anti. I dare you not to. But first, listen to this.
My dad passed away because we didn't have any medicine back then in Yemen because of the siege.
Sorry.
And my mom is now recently living in a destroyed house because of the airstrikes. And she wasn't able to come to the United States because of this decision. What could you help us to ensure that more families are not torn apart?
Your family is suffering because our president is reckless, and his administration is incompetent.
You couldn't have put it better. It was our reckless president who supplied the Saudis with illegal cluster bombs and fighter jets and watched allies bomb the hell out of Yemen. It was our reckless president who bombed Iraq and Libya. Syria doesn't even cover our list of countries we have torn apart and didn't give a about people or where they would go when we destroy their countries. Our presidents are reckless. And now there's another one. You can hate Trump, you can love Trump, I don't care, it's fine with me. But don't you dare pretend that American presidents aren't reckless.
Now, Donald Trump has said he respects Vladimir Putin and would welcome any assistance from Moscow in the fight against ISIL. The comments were made during a recent interview with Fox News.
I do respect him.
Do you?
Why? I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with them.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
So Donald Trump has indicated the U.S. is not as innocent as it seems. We discussed what exactly he meant by this statement with our guests.
Donald Trump is an unprecedented president, and the reality is what he's doing now is he's saying that the foreign policy of the United States is wrong and has been wrong, and he's signaling that it's going to change. And I think it's very brave of him to recognize that America's been going along this interventionist path, which has led to huge problems throughout the world, not just in the region of the Middle East, Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq have all been foreign policy disasters. They've cost the United States and taxpayers a huge amount of money.
It is surprising that he repeats what he has said before, even in 2015, but now as sitting president, that is indeed a historical precedent. Basically what Trump is doing is applying the same moral principles to the US as he applies them to other countries. That is indeed without precedent in US political culture. Personally, I do not believe that the whole basis, the whole premise of US foreign policy, namely to remain dominant in the whole world economically, militarily, politically, will change. It will not change. If he remains on a path towards better relations with Russia, my fear is that the armaments industry in the US, all conservative governments in the EU, NATO, that they will create provocations to force him back into line. And that could be very dangerous indeed.
And more attacks in France as a machete-wielding man assaults a soldier near the Louvre in Paris. That story and others are coming your way after a short break.
When lawmakers manufacture consent instead of public wealth. When the ruling classes protect only themselves. When the financial merry-go-round lifts only the 1% up. It's time to ignore middle-of-the-road signals. Going underground, bringing real news to Britain and the world.
You know what you will never, ever, ever see on American mainstream media?
You won't hear it anywhere else.
This story was almost completely left out of the Western mainstream press.
You won't see it anywhere else.
This is not talked about on CNN because it's not allowed.
You won't see it anywhere else.
Things you'll hear on Crosstalk.
Welcome back. You're watching RT International. We can now take you live to France, to the French city of Lyon, in fact, where the leader of the National Front, Marine Le Pen, has launched her presidential campaign this weekend. Well, she's now laying out her platform focusing on immigration, relations with the EU, and possible abandoning of the euro. And it's after she unveiled the manifesto of her party. And here's what Le Pen told us earlier.
It is absolutely necessary to find the path to justice again, to put France back in order, to reinstate order in the judiciary, in diplomacy. I think I'm in a good position to do this.
Marine Le Pen laid out her policies on Saturday, the primary objectives in her manifesto being leaving the EU and the Eurozone if relations with the bloc can't be radically renegotiated. She also stressed the need to make it easier to deport undocumented migrants and deny them French citizenship. In addition, she proposed banning all organizations linked to hardline Islam. Meanwhile, independent hopeful Emmanuel Macron hasn't presented an official manifesto yet, but at a rally speech, the former socialist sounded rather like his National Front rival.
We can no longer defend a political system that weakens democracy every day. We can no longer praise the European project without proposing at the same time another vision of Europe. I refuse to accept that a man in the name of religion can refuse to shake the hand of a woman. Secularism is a shield. It is a threat to no one. It is a freedom for all and a requirement for everyone.
National Front member Patricia Chagnon says mainstream politicians are clearly worried by the rise of anti-establishment sentiment.
There is not a real program yet. Mr. Macron has not yet said anything about his program. He is just going around France and driving people up and gaining support for people don't know what. I think that what has happened over the past couple of months is that the mainstream politicians of the traditional parties have realized after that the British people voted for Brexit and after the American people voted for Trump that there is some truth in the way the people feel about things, and that the people actually hold the power to change politicians and to get rid of the mainstream politicians. They have become very worried and are maybe looking to adapt their programs. But who wants the imitation?
And the specter of terrorism again looms large in France after a machete-wielding man shouting "God is great" in Arabic tried to force his way into the Louvre Museum in Paris.
The Sentinel operation, which protects our fellow citizens and even soldiers in all public places allowed, prevented an act that was no doubt a terrorist attack.
Now, the incident took place on Friday morning after a suspicious-looking man carrying bags was refused entry to the museum's shopping area. He then tried to attack a soldier with a machete and in turn was shot himself. The assailant is currently in hospital. Despite the menace of terror appearing yet again in Europe, the bloc's politicians have this week been questioning what the biggest threat to the EU is. Prior to the Louvre incident, we spoke to French citizens about who they consider the main risk.
I think it's the United States. Donald Trump.
Because you don't know how he wants to manage his politics.
Probably Russia. There. Well, maybe the US right now, since Trump.
Since Trump, right. Oh, he definitely is a threat.
Now that Donald Trump is in charge, maybe it could be a big threat.
Strong opinions just days ago in Paris, but now given this latest threat near the Louvre in the city centre, are people still seeing America as being as big a threat to Europe as terrorism? We've been out onto the streets of the French capital to find out.
It's too complicated to be able to equate, I think, those two parts.
I don't think America's a threat.
Me being an American, I am proud of my country, and so I would assume that we will be not as threatening to Europe, which we have a lot of allies with.
That is totally ridiculous. EU has problems which are linked to the EU, and this scapegoat policy, blaming Trump, blaming China, blaming Russia, is nonsense. I think any political analyst would say this is ridiculous. I don't see how Mr. Tusk can say this and keep a straight face. EU has problems because they cannot manage the situation today. The EU is blowing up. It's tearing apart. Don't forget that Great Britain is now going to leave the EU. We've got surveys all across the EU in France and Italy with countries who want to leave the EU. We've got Poland and Hungary who themselves want to have their own policies within the EU. So I think this is more, we're looking at maybe the end of the EU as we know it today.
Now, despite a number of horrific attacks that have happened under the current French government's watch, President Hollande remains defiant, as Nikki Aaron now explains.
We in France have a defence policy. We fear nothing.
One thing's for certain, this is likely to be the final nail in the coffin for the Socialist Party. This marks the fourth terror attack on French soil under their watch, leading to a loss of faith among the French people. Starting with the Charlie Hebdo attacks in January 2015, which killed 12 people, then the Paris attacks, which killed 130 people, and then followed by the Bastille Day attack in Nice, which killed 84 people, all incidents which contributed to President Hollande's popularity plummeting. He's now tagged with the label Mr. 4% in reference to his unpopular rating. He's been called the most unpopular French president since the Second World War. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister Manuel Valls caused outrage when he told the French people this.
Times have changed, and we should learn to live with terrorism.
And these are words which have impacted heavily on how the people see the socialists and trust their policies. So, if the ruling party have lost favour, what alternatives do the French people have? Well, until about 2 weeks ago, the clear favourite was the Republican Francois Fillon. But now he finds himself at the centre of a scandal after newspaper claims that his wife Penelope was paid some €1 million for a job that there's actually little evidence of her doing. An investigation has been opened, but even if no evidence is found, the damage may have already been done. We've seen his reputation take a major hit, with his popularity rating really plummeting to 38%. But one candidate who may see this terror attack work in her favour is the National Front's Marine Le Pen. Quite a controversial figure for her stance on migrants, among other things, but controversial no longer means impossible. After all, the outspoken non-PC Donald Trump has just been voted President of the United States, and his stance on migrants, along with his recent travel ban, are things which Marine Le Pen has openly praised. So there is a chance that these are the kinds of policies that the French people could view now in a different light, if this means France will become safer.
I think that the presidency of Mr. Hollande is a complete failure, and that we can see in France today. You had many terror attacks. It's a complete failure. There is no other words to name it. People are simply fed up with the situation with terror and with Islamism in France. It is going to have an impact. Which impact, I cannot say, since we do not know at this step who is going to be the candidate at the end of the day of the French right.
Now, the row over Donald Trump's travel restrictions had spilled over across the Atlantic, leading to a heated debate among members of the European Parliament.
I'm sure that it's a great shock to you to see that a genuinely elected Democrat is doing what he was put in to do.
No, it is not because he is elected that he can go against human values and the values of the United States of America. It's about, fueling populism and nationalism for the moment, what the Trump administration is doing.
Every time you dismiss them as racist or populist, this simply demonstrates an inability to offer a credible alternative.
A travel ban can maybe give a temporary illusion of addressing the issue, but it can only create more frustration and anger. We need cooperation.
Trump is motivated by protecting the United States of America from Islamic terrorism, whereas what has happened in this room and in governments around Europe is you have welcomed these people into your own homes.
Now, the European Council President Donald Tusk has gone a step further in pushing back against Donald Trump, branding his administration an existential threat to the bloc, along with Russia, China, and finally radical Islam.
We are dealing with threats which have previously not occurred. Assertive China, Russia's aggressive policy towards Ukraine and its neighbors, terror and anarchy in the Middle East and in Africa, as well as worrying declarations by the new American administration.
They're panicking, not only Mr. Tusk, who is appalled, by the way, and of course who puts Russia among the enemies. If Europe is disintegrating, which is unfortunately reality, it's not because of Mr. Trump. It's not because of ISIS. It's because the Europeans don't believe in it anymore, and that they don't deliver a good work, neither in Parliament, nor the Council, nor the European Commission. That's clear to all now. I mean, we could see the end of the euro this year, and we blame Donald Trump. I mean, this is ridiculous.
And up next in RT International, we bring you a look at the impact of pesticides on the health of our children.